Every year, families across this country write a check for around $3,800 to put one kid in front of a tutor for a few hours a week. The single most effective math method ever built in Japan cost nothing, took 30 minutes a day, and was invented by a father who didn't have the money for a tutor either. So why is almost everyone still writing that check? My name is Kenji Watanabe. For 11 years, I stood at the front of a cram school classroom in Osaka. We call it a juku. Parents drop off their kids after regular school, sometimes as late as 5 in the evening, and pick them up again after 8 or 9 at night. The kids come in already tired, backpacks still on, half a rice ball eaten on the train ride over because there wasn't time for a real dinner. Some of them fall asleep with their eyes open around hour 2. I taught math to rooms of 28 kids at a time under long fluorescent lights. The same worksheet, the same pace, the same lecture, whether the kid in seat 3 understood fractions or was still lost on them from 2 weeks ago. Nobody in that room asked her to slow down. The lesson plan didn't care. 2 subjects, twice a week each. Most families I taught for ended up somewhere between $3,000 and $4,000 a year, once you added the entrance fee, the textbooks, and the monthly bill together. That number wasn't unusual. It was the middle of the road, not the expensive option, just what an ordinary family paid for an ordinary amount of help. I want to tell you about a woman named Teiko, not a student of mine. This happened back in 1954. Long before I was teaching, long before any of this became an industry. Teiko found a math test folded up small in her son's pocket, the kind of fold a kid does when he doesn't want anyone to see it, tucked behind a handkerchief so it wouldn't fall out at dinner. His name was Takeshi. He was in 2nd grade, and the grade on that test was bad. She didn't call a tutor. There was no tutor to call, not one they could afford on a school teacher's salary. She brought the crumpled test to her husband, a high school math teacher named Toru, and asked him what to do about their son. Toru didn't sign his son up for a class. He sat down at their kitchen table with plain loose-leaf paper and started writing out simple calculation problems. By hand, in pencil, 1 page at a time, 1 page a day, 30 minutes, that's it. He wasn't teaching Takeshi new material every day. He was going back, page by page, finding the exact spot where Takeshi's understanding got shaky, and building forward from there. One small step at a time, never moving on to the next page, until the one before it was easy, boring even, something Takeshi could do without thinking. By 6th grade, Takeshi was solving calculus. Not because he was a genius, because his dad found the real gap and drilled it 30 minutes a day on paper that cost nothing but a pencil and an evening. That kitchen table is the reason the company most people call Kumon exists today, a company now teaching millions of kids across dozens of countries. Which is the strange part of this story, because the method that made it famous is the exact method a broke father built for free at his own kitchen table. And somewhere between 1954 and now, the world forgot that part and just started paying for the building instead. Quick word before I go further. The old methods my family uses, there is more of it than fits in any one video. I gathered the whole of it into a book you can buy in our pinned comment below. The book is the long version. If you want it, it is there. I will not mention it again. I taught at that juku for 11 years, and I watched families do the same thing over and over. Their kid falls behind in one specific spot, maybe long division, maybe fractions, and instead of finding that exact spot and fixing it, the family enrolls the kid in a class that moves at the pace of the whole room. The tutor doesn't slow down for one kid. Nobody goes back to fix the actual hole. The parents keep paying, month after month, and the hole just travels forward into harder material, where it gets bigger and harder to see. I made the same mistake with my own daughter, Aoi. She was in 3rd grade and struggling with multiplication. The kind of struggling where she'd stare at a page and just wait for the numbers to make sense on their own. I put her in a juku, the exact kind I used to teach at, because that's what everyone around me was doing, and because I told myself a professional would know better than I would. 4 months and about $900 later, her grades hadn't moved. She'd sit in a room of other kids, half listening, copying down whatever was on the board, and coming home just as confused as when she left that morning. I was paying for a seat, not a fix. So one night, I sat down with her at our own kitchen table with a plain notebook, the same way Toru Kumon once did with Takeshi, and I asked her one question, not what grade are you in. I asked her to show me the last math problem she could do without thinking, no hesitation, no fingers counting under the table. It took about 4 minutes to find it. It was 2 grade levels below where she was sitting in school every single day. If a professional classroom with a paid tutor and trained instructors missed that gap for 4 straight months, what exactly are we all paying $3,800 a year for? Here's the part that took me 11 years inside the Juku system to fully understand. The whole industry is built to sell hours, not outcomes. A tutor gets paid whether your kid actually closes the gap or not. The class runs the same length every week no matter what. Nobody in that room has a financial reason to find the one exact page where your child's understanding broke down. Because finding it and fixing it in 15 minutes would mean charging you for 15 minutes instead of a semester. I watched capable instructors, good people, keep a kid in the same tier of workbook for a full year, because moving him up would have meant admitting the last 8 months hadn't done much. Compare that to what Toru Kumon actually did with Takeshi at that kitchen table. He didn't teach new lessons every day. Most of what he wrote out was material Takeshi already half understood, deliberately, on purpose, repeated until it stopped requiring any thought at all. Then and only then did he move 1 step forward, never 2 steps. Never skip ahead because the school calendar said it was time. 1 step at a time, always right at the edge of what Takeshi could already almost do, close enough to be within reach, hard enough to actually stretch him. This is the part that gets left out once Kumon becomes a global company charging $80 to $160 a month per subject at a center. The method itself, the actual mechanism that worked, isn't the building. It isn't the instructor standing at the front. It's the daily habit of finding the exact edge of a kid's ability and drilling exactly there, in short sessions every single day, with correction happening within minutes, instead of a week later on a return test nobody reads carefully. Most tutoring, expensive or cheap, skips that part entirely. It teaches on a schedule instead of a gap. A kid gets slotted into wherever the class happens to be that week, not wherever the kid actually is, and everyone in the room quietly pretends those are the same thing. It isn't just Juku. Every SAT prep course, every after-school program that charges by the semester instead of by the problem solved, runs on the same quiet trick. I remember a boy named Soda, one of my students for almost 2 years. Smart kid, quiet, always polite. He stayed in the same middle tier of workbook for 11 straight months because nobody ever sat with him for 10 uninterrupted minutes to find the one specific page where he'd started guessing instead of solving. His parents paid the full monthly rate that whole time, believing 11 months of attendance meant 11 months of progress. It didn't. It meant 11 months of a seat being filled. Here's the counterintuitive part. The thing that would have saved me $900 and 4 wasted months with Aoi. The most expensive tutor in the world cannot fix a gap they never located. And the free method, done properly at your own kitchen table, locates the gap in about 4 minutes. Because you are the only person in the world who has both the time and the reason to actually look closely enough to find it. So here's exactly what I do now, with Aoi and with my younger son Ren, and it costs us less than $30 a month combined. Step 1, find the real level, not the assumed level. Every Sunday morning, I hand my kids one worksheet from one grade level below where they're supposed to be sitting in school. If they finish it in under 5 minutes with no mistakes, I move them up a level and try again the next week. The moment they hesitate or erase something or get a single answer wrong, that's the real starting point, not the school's calendar, theirs. This whole test takes 10 minutes, and it's the single most important step in the entire method, because every other step depends on getting this one right. Step 2, get the actual worksheets. You don't need to write your own by hand at midnight, though Toru Kumon did exactly that for years. Kumon publishes their own workbooks now, sold retail in bookstores and online, no center enrollment required, usually somewhere between $5 and $10 each. I buy 2 or 3 a year, 1 per subject. And they're built on the exact incremental method Toru designed for his own son 70 years ago. That's the whole trick nobody tells you when they sign you up at the front desk. You can buy the actual method on paper for the price of a large pizza instead of paying $80 a month for the building it's taught in. Step 3, same time, every single day, 30 minutes, no exceptions. Not an hour crammed in on Saturday. Not whenever we get around to it. My kids do their page right after breakfast, before school, every weekday, plates still on the table. Plenty of families in Japan build this into the morning. Asagakushu, morning study. Before the first bell even rings. The brain is fresh. There's no negotiating because it's just part of the morning routine, like brushing teeth. And 30 minutes done, 7 days in a row, beats 3.5 hours crammed into one Saturday session every single time. The habit is the product here, not the material on the page. Step 4, grade it yourself, same day, and make them fix what's wrong before they move on to anything else. This is the piece the Juku system structurally cannot give you, no matter how good the instructor standing at the front happens to be. A tutor grades your kid's work a week later, hands back a paper covered in red marks, and moves straight on to new material, regardless of whether it was understood. I grade Awie's page the same morning, right there at the kitchen table over a second cup of tea, and if something's wrong, she fixes it, while the mistake is still fresh in her head, not 7 days cold and half forgotten. That correction, happening within the hour instead of the following week, is worth more to a kid's actual understanding than anything a classroom of 28 kids can offer, no matter how well trained the person at the front of it is. Step 5. Track it somewhere visible. We keep a plain notebook on the kitchen counter. 1 line per day, a check mark for done, and a small star for done with 0 mistakes. Nothing fancy, no app, no chart with animated confetti. Seeing 3 weeks of stars in a row does something for a kid's confidence that no amount of encouragement from a stranger in a classroom can replicate. Ren asks to see the notebook before he asks, "What's for dinner most nights?" Step 6, and this is where I'll mention the one tool I actually pay for. For subjects outside math, where Aoi needs a real explanation and not just repetition, we use an app called Study Sapuri. It runs about $19 a month. Video lessons from real instructors covering every subject through high school. And it was built specifically because so many Japanese families were looking for something cheaper than a Juku and more thorough than a workbook alone. $19 a month. Compare that to the cost of one single Juku subject alone, and you start to see where the other $3,700 was actually going. Step 7. If you can manage it, find one other parent and trade. Torukumon didn't stay a family of one for long. Once neighborhood parents saw what he was doing with Takeshi at that kitchen table, he started teaching their kids the same way, for free, because that's simply what neighbors did back then. You don't need to build a business out of it. You need one other family willing to swap an hour of grading on a Tuesday for an hour of grading on a Thursday. So neither of you is doing this alone every single day of the year. Ren's best friend from down the street comes over most Thursday mornings now, and his mother takes both boys on Tuesdays. Neither of us has ever discussed payment. We just trade the hour, the way Torukumon's neighbors once did, without ever meaning to start anything as big as what it eventually became. Here's the bigger thing this actually changes. That $3,800 a year most families spend, if you cut it down to a couple $100s in workbooks and one small app subscription, that's real money back in a family's pocket every single year. Money that can go toward a vacation, a savings account, or just one less thing to worry about at the end of the month. But the money isn't even the part that matters most to me. Aoi and Ren know their dad sits down with them every single morning. Not a stranger, not a room of 28 other kids under fluorescent lights. Me, at our table, with a pencil and a second cup of tea, looking at their actual work. That 30 minutes has become the steadiest part of our day. Steadier than dinner most nights, and I don't think either of them will remember the Juku I almost kept paying for. I think they'll remember the notebook on the counter and the sound of the pencil in the quiet kitchen before the rest of the house wakes up. Aoi is in 5th grade now. She hasn't set foot in a Juku since that first year, and she's a full grade level ahead of where the school calendar says she should be. Not because I'm a better teacher than the ones I used to work alongside, but because I only had to find her real gap once, honestly, without a monthly bill, depending on me not finding it too quickly. There's a saying, older teachers in Japan used to tell new ones, and I heard it more than once during my 11 years in that classroom, usually from instructors who'd been doing this for 30 years and had stopped believing in the seat time model. A good teacher doesn't hand a student the answer. A good teacher finds the exact spot where the student stopped understanding and stands there with them until it's easy again. That's it. That's the entire method. It was never about the building, and it was never about the price on the contract. So here's what I want you to do tonight. Not next week, not this weekend, tonight. Sit down with your kid for 10 minutes. Don't ask what grade they're in. Hand them one problem, then a slightly harder one, then a slightly harder one than that, until they finally get stuck. That stuck point, that's the real starting line. Everyone in that expensive classroom has been guessing at it for months, sometimes years. You can find it in 10 minutes at your own kitchen table tonight with a pencil you already own. Tell me in the comments where that stuck point turned out to be for your kid. I read every single one of them, and I want to know if it surprised you, because it almost always surprises the parents I've talked to over the years. Next time, I'll show you the exact one-page test I use every Sunday to figure out which level my kids are actually on. The same test I've now handed to families since I left the Juku, and the one number on it that tells you immediately whether your kid is coasting through easy material or quietly stuck on something nobody has caught yet.